All right, diving right in today. A lot of you were really curious about this heart attack, early warning signs and symptoms article, so we're going to tackle that head on.
Yeah, seems like a pretty important one to get a good grasp on.
Absolutely. And like we always do, trying to get to the heart of it, so to speak, without, getting bogged down.
Right. No need to make it more overwhelming than it needs to be.
Exactly. So we'll walk through these 6 potential early warning signs that the article lays out, things your body might be trying to tell you, sometimes even a month before a heart attack happens.
That's right, giving you a little more insight into what might be going on, potentially.
So first up, and this one maybe isn't what you'd immediately think of with heart issues, we're talking swollen feet.
Yeah, puffy ankles, that sort of thing.
Right, and we all have days where our feet feel a little, swollen, especially after being on them all day. But what makes this kind of swelling different, according to the article?
Well, the article suggests this kind of swelling could be tied to your heart, not pumping blood as efficiently as it should.
Like a backup in the system?
Yeah, you could think of it that way. If the heart's lower chambers are struggling, blood flow can back up, and gravity pulls that fluid down, into your legs and feet.
So it's more than just end of day swelling, more of a persistent thing.
Yeah, exactly. It could be an indicator that the heart is having a bit of a harder time circulating blood the way it normally would.
Really interesting. Okay, next on the list is fatigue. And I think we can all relate to feeling tired. But what kind of tiredness are we talking about here? The kind that coffee can't fix.
Uh-huh. Right. Definitely not just your average afternoon slump. The article emphasizes this feeling of a really deep and persistent exhaustion, the kind that just doesn't let up.
Like even when you get a good night's sleep, you still feel drained.
That's it. The idea is if the arteries that are supplying your heart with blood and oxygen become narrowed or even blocked, your heart has to work much harder to get that blood pumping.
Like it's putting in overtime, so it's going to feel that strain.
Yeah, and that can lead to feeling absolutely wiped out, even when you haven't necessarily been doing all that much.
Makes sense. And then we have another one that ties into blood flow, shortness of breath. How are the heart and lungs connected in this?
Well, they're pretty closely linked,
Yeah.
If your heart isn't pumping as effectively as it should be, your lungs might not be getting enough of that oxygen-rich blood.
Ah, so it's like a chain reaction. The heart struggles and then the lungs are impacted.
Yeah, and that can leave you feeling breathless, even when you're not exerting yourself a lot.
Your body's basically sending up a signal that something's not quite right.
Right, it's saying, hey, we need more oxygen here.
Okay, so then there's weakness. How does that tie into potential heart issues?
It comes back to that blood flow again. If the blood vessels are narrowed, it's not just the heart that's affected.
So other parts of the body are going to feel it too.
Exactly. Your muscles need that constant supply of oxygen and nutrients that the blood carries. And if the circulation isn't great, they can essentially be starved of what they need.
And that can lead to feeling weak overall.
Yeah, and in some cases, as the article mentions, it can even lead to falls if your muscles just aren't getting what they need to function properly.
That's a pretty clear sign something's off. The next one is dizziness and cold sweats, which sounds a bit more, I don't know, intense maybe.
Yeah, that one can be a bit more alarming, for sure. You see, your brain is super sensitive to any changes in blood flow.
So if the heart isn't doing its job, the brain is going to be one of the first to let you know.
Exactly. If there's not enough blood getting to the brain, because the heart's struggling, it can cause dizziness and that feeling of cold sweats.
A warning signal that the brain's not getting enough of what it needs to run properly.
Right. Definitely something to pay close attention to if that starts happening.
And last but not least, chest pressure. This is probably the one most people think of when they think of heart trouble, right?
That's the classic one for sure. The article describes it as discomfort, tightness, or pressure in the chest.
And it can range in intensity.
Yeah, sometimes it's pretty subtle at first, then it might gradually become more intense as time goes on.
Okay, and that chest pressure, does the article give any more insight into what might be causing it?
Yeah, they explain that the pressure, which is sometimes called angina, can happen when your heart muscle isn't getting enough of that oxygen-rich blood, which they call ischemia. It's basically a direct signal that the heart itself is having to work too hard.
So those are the 6 potential warning signs. Swollen feet, fatigue, shortness of breath, weakness, dizziness, and cold sweats, and chest pressure. But it's important to remember, like with anything we talk about, this is just information from one source, not a diagnosis.
Definitely. If you're experiencing any of these, the best thing you can do is talk to your doctor. They're going to be able to give you the most personalized advice.
Absolutely. And one thing this article really made me think about is how well we know our own bodies. Like, do we notice when something feels a little off, even if it's subtle?
That's such a good point. It's about being in tune with those little changes, those things we might normally just brush off.
Because sometimes those seemingly small things can actually be a piece of a bigger puzzle.
Exactly. They could be trying to tell you something important about your health.
So maybe the takeaway here is to just take a moment and really listen to what your body's trying to tell you.
And if something feels different, don't ignore it. Talk to a professional and see what they think.
Great advice. We're out of time for today, but as always, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
And keep those questions coming. We'll see you next time.
See you then.